when I was about 6, I think television came into the house, and then it would close at 10 o'clock or be finished, for the day. Now, if you go visit a house in England now, Great Britain, the television is always on. It's there all the time.
Yeah.
I hate it. Are you watching television? No. Well, I'll switch it off. No, don't switch it off. Don't switch it off. There might be something on. Oh.
It's a real problem.
Switch it off. It demands all your attention. Radio doesn't do that. You can do other things when you with the radio. You can, I don't know. Television is, you have to, and television is fine, but people they're not selective about television now.
I completely agree with you. I completely.
But it's the same thing as the music. You can't stop it. You have to find your own way of dealing with it. Otherwise, you become very isolated, what we call marginalized. So you have to accept it and say, well, that's not for me, so I'll do something else. So I gave up drinking alcohol 21 years ago, and now it's just normal for me not to drink. And I can go in pubs and things, and it doesn't bother me, that people are drinking. But once they start to get a little bit drunk, I say, okay, see you tomorrow, good night. because
the best moment.
they're talking a different language to the one I understand. Once you begin to drink, it changes your mentality, and it's funny. And sometimes you think, oh well, I'll go home now. I'll come and see you in the morning when you've got a headache. Or you find your own way of making your life work for you, as opposed to conforming to this uniform existence that we all seem to be funneled into. I don't think it's easy. It's probably more appealing to me because I didn't begin with television. I didn't begin. I began with radio. Radio was the first thing that really connected with me. Then television helped to confirm that, because without seeing the Beatles, you wouldn't have the same impact. But I heard a lot of the Beatles on the radio when I was a child. And they were a very, very good band, Angelo. They were really good live. They were really good, Miguel. They were a really good band. If you want to listen to some early Beatles stuff, I'm sure it's all there, because a lot of it was recorded for radio shows, television shows. Excuse me. And before Sergeant Pepper, in the build-up to Revolver and Rubber Soul, there was a lot of the Beatles playing on radio shows live.
Yes.
And if you listen to that early stuff, they are a really punchy band.
Yeah, they were very good.
They play really good together, and they also sang great together. So the combination is very powerful. A lot of groups play together. Singing was great in the studio, not so good live. Good night, good one night, not so good the next night. They're a great band to listen to, and also I think it informs you how to, play together as a unit without being. I don't know. They were exciting.
Yeah.
They understood dynamics. They were. They were a good band, as we say, band.
Yes. Amazing band. Yes. As a friend of mine who's a big fan of Beatles, he says always, "Oh, today, can you find someone like them without monitors? Perfect tuning of the voice, natural talent is."
Well, they're not the only ones. They're not the only ones, but they did set the bench, what we call the benchmark, set the standard.
The benchmark. Yes. Yeah. And so young. It's amazing. So young.
Yeah. Well, they went to Germany and played hours and hours and hours
yeah,
and hours, you know. And
yeah,
in a way, I did the same thing. On Sundays in Germany, we'd play maybe 10 hours.
yeah,
You know, we'd play in the afternoon for the young
yeah,
children for 2 or 3 hours,
yeah.
45 minutes, 15 break for maybe 3, so that, you know, then we'd have dinner and then we'd play in the evening and we'd
Wow,
play from 7 o'clock maybe till 3 o'clock in the morning. That's
super,
with
super.
breaks, with breaks, you know,
Yes.
and you well, you learn a
Yeah,
lot of things like
a
that,
lot.
you know, because
Yeah,
back to what you were talking about, Miguel, you know, you can practice a lot, but if you don't play, as in
hmm,
play in front of people,
yeah, with
it's a
real
Yes.
people. Huh?
it's a
Yes.
waste
Yeah,
of time
yeah,
because things are
Yes.
different when it's very different when you play live,
yes,
you know,
Yes.
with
yes,
the band,
yes,
you know, it's not practicing.
yeah,
And practicing isn't learning songs with a band. Practicing is learning your instrument.
yeah.
Yes.
The
I
band
agree.
is
Yeah,
rehearsing, and
yeah, yeah,
then playing live is you know, you have to learn how to deal with problems and how
yeah.
to deal with a bad sound and how to deal with guitar players that play too loud and
Yeah, yeah,
sorry, Angela.
yeah.
Hey, boom.
I agree. I agree on everything you said. Yeah, I know. Are you planning to go on the road with Slim Pickings
Well, I have to
on the
see
road?
what this Zoom gig
Yeah,
brings.
yeah,
You know, first of all, I have to do this gig, and then it's the what we call the logistics of it. You know, do the other people want to do it? Do I have to
yeah,
look for other people who want to do it? I want to play live. You know,
yeah,
but I don't. I want to play in small clubs.
yeah.
I don't want to
Fantastic.
play in big halls at first because I don't think really the format lends itself to a big
Yeah,
concert hall. It's more a club where, you know, maybe
yeah,
you can meet people who you didn't know were your friends, like you guys. You
yeah.
know, so if I played in, where are you from, Miguel?
Spain.
I know
From
that.
Spain.
Where?
Ah,
Madrid.
where? Ah, where in Galicia, in the northwest, A
Okay.
Coruña.
So if I played there, I would meet Miguel and we could talk and you know, maybe
Yes.
would come in. It would be a whole different level of, you know, a gig. It would be
Yeah.
more a social occasion as well. You understand?
Yes.
As opposed to,
Yes.
you know, being, I don't want you have to sell something new for, I think, to play in big stadiums, you know.
Yeah.
Although I did see something on YouTube the other day which made me kind of almost cry. It was Dave Gilmour
Yeah.
doing Pink Floyd songs in Chile.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Chile.
But he was
Mm,
he was doing all the Pink Floyd repertoire, and
mm,
these people were maybe 30 years old, but
mhm.
they're not the original fans of Pink Floyd. They've
Yeah.
learnt to, I don't know, they've been introduced to Pink Floyd by their
Yeah.
parents or something, and they know all
Yes.
the words
Mm.
and they sing them with a passion because you know that whole of South America has such a problem with politics, and
Mm.
I think those songs speak to them.
Mm.
So you know, the live
Yeah.
thing will, you know, will come from the Zoom gigs.
Yeah. Okay. That
Yes.
it is now. It is a very difficult time for
Every,
playing live in real venues. You know, so it can be nice to organize a online show. Okay.
Yes. But
So, yeah,
in future, we will see you in person. I'm sure. In
yeah, that
future,
would be great, Miguel.
yeah,
Right.
when we can do the real live shows
Yeah,
after this pandemic
yeah,
situation.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
We hope.
yeah,
And I would like, it's very easy or very difficult question, but
mm,
uh, for you, what kind of what are your favorite albums? Not about Dire Straits. If you have to choose
yeah.
a couple of albums in your as a musician or as a drummer or as a music lover, for you, what kind of albums are your favorite to have with you
Um,
always?
well, it changes, but you know, I like Pat Metheny a lot. I
Wow.
like a lot of Pat Metheny albums. I like Keith Jarrett.
Mhm.
Yes.
and I like a band called the Punch Brothers, who
Mm.
don't even have a drummer, you know. So
Punch.
uh,
Sorry,
Punch,
Punch Brothers.
Punch.
Okay. Okay.
Punch with the.
Let me take note. I don't know
Uh,
them.
What else
Yeah.
do I like? Bonnie Raitt. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I like a lot of stuff. Randy Newman, but it tends to be older stuff. And so I like Shadows and Light from Joni Mitchell. Depends. Sometimes I listen to a whole load of albums I didn't listen to for 5 years, and think,
Yeah.
and then other ones you listen to them. I used to like this. Now my opinion has changed. You know, so it's always changing. It's a very fluid thing. You know,
Yeah.
and Weather Report as well is a big favourite.
Wow. Yeah. I know them.
I like 8:30. It's a live album, so that's great. Old stuff, you know, like Everly
Good
Brothers
stuff.
stuff. You know, it's I don't really have any favourites. You know, I mean, we have a program here called Desert Island Discs, where
Mm.
on the radio, where you're taken to this imaginary island on your own, and you have to choose eight records that you would take with you, and everybody does that. You know. And they
Yeah.
always change what they want. But sometimes I listen to the Beatles stuff before Rubber Soul and Revolver, and
Yeah.
that's some of my favourite stuff. But I think that's more nostalgic. I have a kind of real strong connection with that from being, you know, having heard it when I was 15 or 16 17 18, you know, and it really does have a kind of emotional impact, you know, which other records don't do that. I just like them because I like them.
Yeah.
You know, but the Beatles have a
Yes.
special place because it's they made so much possible for a lot of people.
Mm. Wow. James Taylor. I love him. I love him too.
And James Taylor
Yeah.
is a big favourite.
I love James Taylor. Yeah. One of my favorites. Yeah.
Great, great. It's very difficult to choose. There are
Yeah,
thousands of records. For me, for example, I always when I wanna present an album to someone, to my family, I always buy the same Kind of Blue of Miles Davis, of Miles
Ah.
Davis. It's always my present for people. Okay, you have to listen this and listen this always, because for me, for example, Kind of Blue is
Yeah.
the
blues.
Kind of Blue of
Oh,
Miles
Miles
Davis.
Davis. Yeah, oh, yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
Miles
yeah.
Davis.
That's a classic.
For
I
me,
have it.
it's,
Yeah, I have it. Most people have it, really.
Yeah.
yes. For me, it's the present for all the people. Okay, you have to listen this, please
Got a
listen this.
fantastic atmosphere, that album.
Yes,
Fantastic. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And
So
Dylan
it's
too,
great.
you know. So there's too many to mention, you know. It just happens to be what you can think of in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
So now we have a moment about some pics I want to show you. Okay. So let me try. Let me try. So it would be nice if you comment one of every pic I am going to show you. But now
Okay.
let me try
A little game. It's a little
a little
game.
game. A little game. A funny game.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Surprise.
Hope I win.
Okay.
Can you see the pic?
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure where that is. It looks like it's in America.
Ah, wow.
Yes.
In America. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I don't recognise it as being anywhere
Yeah.
else. You can come and have a look. Hang on. Wait.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's that hotel,
Mate, this
Oh.
is
Mayflower.
it's the Mayflower Hotel, apparently,
Okay.
in New York.
Cool.
Yeah. Good memory.
Wow. Perfect. Now the next one is this
That's
man.
Charlie Gillett. He's the one
Charlie
that
Gillett.
started everything.
Yeah.
He accelerated the whole process of Dire Straits being signed to a record
yeah.
company. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
he was a really respected DJ.
Yeah.
He had a program in London on local radio, so it wasn't a network. It wasn't all through the country. It's just London.
Yeah.
He also wrote books on rock and roll, and he was very much respected. And he was the first guy to play a demo of Sultans of Swing on the radio, and that just made everything begin to happen much more quickly.
Wow.
So we have a great regard. He died, unfortunately, but we have a great regard for Charlie.
Yeah, and John Isley gave him the cassette. Yeah, can you confirm
Well,
this?
John
Yeah.
knew of him because
Oh,
John had an interest in a record shop called Honky Tonk Records.
oh,
I
okay.
think it was in Camden or Chalk Farm, an area of London. And he took that. The record shop was called Honky Tonk Records because
Yeah.
Charlie had a radio show called Honky Tonk Records, something. So and he would speak to Charlie on the phone or speak to somebody who represented Charlie and ask him what records he was intending to play on the radio, and then he would try to stop them so that
Okay.
the music could be sold as well. It was just all R&B. It's that same old stuff that I'm talking about, with Slim Pickens. It's just the same rhythm and blues,
Wow. Okay.
American music, a lot of it, from the 50s, 60s. Bobby Blue
Perfect.
Bland, Larry Williams, Little Richard, Jerry Lee Lewis, all that kind of stuff, all the Muddy Waters, that all that kind of stuff, all packaged up. Neville Brothers.
Yeah, the Neville. Yeah,
But that's later, really, not the same era.
I love this stuff. I love. Okay, next one.
Oh,
Rock Garden. It's Rock Garden. What is it?
well, I don't recognise it because that doesn't look like it's in England at all.
Oh,
It looks like a venue that we may have played at somewhere.
Yes.
Recognise it.
maybe
It's-
Miguel knows something, Miguel, about
Yeah,
it.
Miguel,
yes,
do you know?
Yeah, I know a thing, not for me, because I was reading about it. It was one of the first venues that you played with Dire Straits, more or less.
What,
at the
England
beginning.
or
Yeah, in London. In London, I was reading about it, but my question
well,
is,
no.
if you remember,
the Rock Garden we played at was in Covent Garden.
Ah,
okay,
okay.
I don't
appears
recognise.
like one of the first venues
Okay.
in shows that were in the beginning, 1978, 77, the beginning.
So it's London, yeah.
Yeah, Wikipedia says about it, but my question is if you recognize, because you
I don't
have,
recognise
you
it
were
at all.
there.
Okay.
All the things change, as you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe now it's a supermarket. No?
All right. Okay. Next one. Oh, maybe it's some problem.
Okay.
No.
Next one.
Okay. Next one is this.
Oh, that's Talking
Poster.
Heads.
Yeah.
We did a tour with them. 77, that would be. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was funny.
Okay.
It was funny because they'd never changed their guitar strings. They didn't know you're supposed to do that.
Oh. So why they never changed?
Well, because they're like sort of part of the punk era. They just, I don't think they've been playing very long. They play with tremendous energy and enthusiasm, and that's that thing we were talking about before.
Yeah.
Byrne has been fantastic. His career has really blossomed. He's really has been somebody who is got a fantastic repertoire and back catalogue.
Yes.
So good luck to him. But they were very rough around the edges on that tour, and they had Psycho Killer was their big hit then.
Mhm.
Psycho Killer, qu'est-ce que c'est?
Yes.
Fa 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 fa.
Is that a new wave? Is that new wave? How would you define? that song?
New Wave's a
New
better
Wave,
term for it. Yeah, I didn't like it because Chris, the drummer, he was what I call a butcher.
Mm.
He just smashed everything to pieces. Oh, I know him.
The next one, Is
Yeah,
I would
it's
say that
very-
might be the Anchor.
is
and
it a party? Is it a party? What is
Hope and Anchor? I think that's the Hope and Anchor.
Oh, open
Anchor.
anchor. Oh, yeah.
Hope and Anchor in Islington.
Cafe race.
Yeah.
No, it's
All
not
right.
Cafe.
No.
I don't know. I can't see it.
Okay.
Who's on bass? That might be Cafe Racers. That might be. That's in. Yeah, that's Cafe Racers. That's in Islington.
Ah, Cafe
Yeah,
Race.
I remember him, the guy with the Macalo shirt. That's right. Yeah, yeah, that's definitely it. I think I just stood in.
Mhm.
I didn't really. I think Mark and I just, joined
Okay.
in one night.
Yeah.
I don't think that wasn't an official band. I think
Okay.
Martin used to play with them, and I went along and played, for a laugh. I think.
Okay.
Okay, we guess.
Other one.
Okay.
Okay. This is
I
a.
think we have a
Are you
couple
dan-
more.
Are you a dancer too? Are you a dancer?
I like to dance, but I'm told not to. Yeah.
Can you remember this? No, I found it in a fanzine. You know,
Oh,
I
really?
was when I was 16 years old. I was in a Italian fan club of Dire Straits
Yeah.
called Solid Rock
Yeah.
by the journalist Giancarlo Passarella. Is a famous journalist, and I received the fanzine at home, and I saw this pic. Oh, wow! Are you dancing tango with Mark?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, there was. What's that? Go on.
Well,
Next one.
next one is this.
That I don't know where that was. Probably in Germany, the television, doing television. We had to do a lot of playback
Okay.
when
Yeah.
songs and stuff like that was a hit. So
Mhm.
we would go to Holland and Germany, and they would just have these crazy sets, like you were playing just one song as part of a program that was created like a pop program, and they had these stupid sets that you had to you had just
Yes.
mime, and we just
Playback.
be
Yeah.
idiots. Really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise,
Next
it was just insufferable. It's
Mm.
horrible.
Waiting
You
and
never
waiting
remember.
hours.
When the camera comes, you can never remember what you played on the record. It's very difficult for drummers.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't remember.
Yes.
With this, did I do that? Did I do this? So
Yeah.
yeah,
I think also it's difficult for guitar player to without listening to your
Yeah.
guitar to mimic to find the position. So
yeah.
So okay. Next one,
Oh, that's Hal,
Hal.
the handsome Hal. Yeah,
How?
Okay.
not very different there, don't I?
Do you remember maybe
I look like
where can be
football
this
manager.
photo?
Look like Arsene Wenger. Next, quick.
Hal's lovely.
Hal's a lovely guy. Oh, that's a nice one. Where did they do that?
Yeah.
Drummers World.
That's at Drummers World, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
We know you love Birimbao.
Yeah.
It's
That's
true, yes.
Drummers World, as I'm being
In New York.
in New York, near Times Square. It's my favourite drum store.
Mhm.
Not there anymore. You have to do
Oh.
it online. Drummers World, not to be confused with Drummer World, which is a website.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And the
Next
last,
one
I think.
is with
That's-
the percussion.
Gale.
That's our friend Gail Hadani took that photo.
Oh.
That is, that's me on the talking drum. I have this relationship with lots of African stuff,
Wow. Cool.
But unfortunately, in this country, it doesn't sound so good, because we don't have the sunshine. Tend to play them in the summer when it's
Yeah.
warm and the skins dry out a bit and they're not so, flat.
Yeah.
But I used to have a guy called Nana Vasconcelos, who's
Yeah,
he's
I
still
know. I know
died.
this
He
name.
died a while ago.
Yeah.
He was one of my heroes.
Wow. Cool.
Yes.
There wasn't one.
Yes.
And this is
Oh, where's
The-
this?
this is the
Oh, that's outside where we lived.
yeah.
Yes.
I didn't live there, but that's where we rehearsed. And that's that gig where
Mhm.
we played outside, where I told you about the punk bands
Yes.
do.
Yeah,
started to use the flat as a dressing room come tuning up room, and it was just all too much for them. They couldn't tune up. They just wanted to play.
Yeah.
So they tune the guitar, ding, 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 and then begin to play immediately out of tune because it was just all too much. We're here to play, not to not to tune up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
that's outside. That's Farrah House. That's it.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay,
Yes.
that was the picks. Okay.
That's fantastic, Angela. Great.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
we selected some picks to show you.
Yes.
Okay, but
We
now,
have a lot.
well, as you can imagine, but talking about Dire Straits, how would you define your style? Because to me, your style is a fusion of jazz elements, rock, folk. I can't really describe your style. How
That's
would you describe it?
what musical.
Yeah. Okay. That's new. Yeah, music is music. Okay. So I
A lot
was.
of drummers just play
Mm,
beats,
mm,
and they play loud.
yeah.
It's not so easy to play quieter. It's not so easy to play dynamically. I just I think it comes from how began to play in the early days and who I listened to. If you listen to things like Kathy's Clown,
Yeah.
the Everly Brothers, the drums are very much an integral part of things, and I always want to be part of the conversations. Gone.
Yeah.
Oh, we're back. Always want to be part of the conversation. So
Yeah.
I'm always looking for that. And I played, did a lot of folk rock in the 70s,
Yep.
which was because you can't play loud in that.
Yeah.
So that was really useful for me. Played a lot in the studio, so you listen to what you play, and it's very cathartic. You have to learn quickly because, as I said before, in the studio,
Yeah.
the microphone is very unforgiving.
Yes.
It's all there. What you
Yeah.
play. Did I play that? Oh, I did. And your ear is much more selective. Oh, I didn't. You edit out things that are not good.
Hmm.
The microphone doesn't do that. You have to learn. Play with a metronome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just listen. Really. I mean, the less effort you need to expend to play, the more energy you have to listen to other
Mm.
people around you,
Yes.
and maybe be a part of the conversation as opposed to playing just a beat that
Yes.
then they will play over.
Yeah. Yeah. So Miguel, maybe you have some question
Yes.
about
Yes.
Dire
Yes.
Straits era. Yeah.
Yes. About that beginning in the early days, I was thinking about uh, how difficult can be to deal with the fame or with the saxophone when the bands make a big hit like Saltas of Swing, the first record, all people loves the record. How difficult for a mm, for a lover musician, how difficult can be to deal with with a hit,
Well,
with
yeah,
when
it's
people,
yeah.
how difficult can be, or can you?
Yeah,
It's
there are
difficult.
always problems. If you have a lot of people telling you how good you are, in the end you start to believe it. And it's
Mm.
I think the way I got around that was we did one tour of America where I lost my clothes in the hotel, and I bought a lot of clothes on the road, and I bought them all for stage, and I used to put them on, go on stage, and then take them off, and that was those stage clothes were the rock and roll star, and when I took them off, I just wanted to be a normal person, and I was more able to deal with it in that way, But it is a problem, If you have people, I mean, if you have people constantly telling you that you're great, then I think you begin to believe it, and you want things to happen, and I don't know.
Except me. Except me.
It's like-
Yeah, say something. Let me hear it.
No, I was going to say I didn't tell you were great. I used to put your feet back on the
Yeah, Linda would keep me in check as well.
yes.
Big time. Big
That
time.
was good. So I don't know how to answer that. I can only answer it from my perspective,
Yeah.
I remember once way before Dire Straits, I played in a band called Spring, It's one of my
Wow.
favourite eras. You know, it was a band from Leicester, and the first band I played in that did all its own material, and we did a support to Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Wow.
You know, when you were the warm-up band.
Yeah, yeah.
So we were quite excited because we had keyboards as well, so that was quite exciting. And after the sound check, we went backstage, and all the rooms were empty. I found a practice pad in one of the rooms, which is obviously Cole Palmer's, but I hadn't encountered a practice pad, and I started playing on it because there was nobody in the room. And Greg Lake came in, and I looked up at him. Greg Lake was the bass player, and he just walked out, straight out. He didn't talk to me. I wasn't worthy of conversation with him, you know. And then this roadie came in. You get out. So no, you shouldn't be here. You know, can you please leave? Get out. You're not here. You shouldn't be here. And so as I walked out, Greg Lake was kind of standing there in the hallway, and he just looked down at me and walked in. You know, and that's you know, that's rock and roll. You know, stardom gone a bit awry. You know, because normally you would want to talk to people. You know, hello. You know, hope we can
Yes.
well. You know, but there was no what we call a conduit to have the conversation. He wasn't going to talk to me. I was, you know, wasn't worthy. Yeah, a lot of that goes on, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, but you always be very elegant and very polite. Always no rock
Well,
star
people
history.
say in the business that you know, you
Not to
be
be
polite
something.
because you meet the same people on the way up as you do on the way down. So you know, we all have a shelf life. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
We're all equal.
Hmm?
We're all equal.
yeah.
Okay, Pick, during the Dire Straits first times, how was the process of arrangement of the songs? I mean, Mark took the songs already written. I think.
Songs are mainly written, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, and how did you create the drum part? You decide by yourself, or Mark?
Yeah, well, I'm
said-
pretty much
yeah.
by myself. And
Okay,
Mark
okay.
had some ideas.
Okay.
He would put them forward.
Mhm.
It's mainly the drum part came from me, and Mark would make some
Okay.
maybe suggestions occasionally.
Mhm.
David and John weren't part of that process.
Yeah.
They were just too busy trying to learn their own parts. And they must say they were so inexperienced that it was the first band that either of them had ever played in. So they had
Yeah.
they had a lot to contend with.
Yeah.
So
Because you and Mark already met together before Dire Straits.
well, I
Yeah.
met him briefly. He came to a house where I rented a room.
Oh, okay.
The guy who owned the house was a musician. He played in a group called Lindisfarne.
Okay.
Unfortunately, he's dead now. And Mark, this guy who owned the house was from Newcastle.
Mm-hmm.
That's where Mark is from. And the guy's name's Cy Cow, and for the day he let Mark record on what was really just a reel-to-reel 2-track Revox tape recorder, and I was in, so I just played some percussion similar to that photo you had, like hand drums, stuff, shakers, tambourines. Just added some stuff just because I was there, and I wanted to, you know, I thought, oh, I can put some drums on that. Well, but not acoustic drums. We didn't have the means to record a drum kit. You know, we didn't have the microphones or anything. So I played hand drums and that sort of thing. And then I forgot all about it. And then 6 months later, he came and knocked on the door and said, "Remember me?" And I started going down to that apartment in Deptford where you saw the plaque. It kind of developed from there. But I was also playing in other bands at that time.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
So I was playing in Dire Straits, and I was playing in a girl called Charlie Dawes' Back Pocket, and maybe doing a couple of sessions. Can't remember really, but that's how it developed. That's how. So I didn't know that much about him. He was He was still teaching. He was he was teaching English to adults, to further education college.
Mm.
So, it was very early days.